Yes! Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of The Completionist. My cousin Nick brought over his PlayStation to my house when we were kids, and I was so confused as to what it was when he showed it to me. I mean, I had the N64 with my 4 controllers, ready to play any and all the games that I had, but then I saw the PlayStation and I remember being really confused. And then things took an even weirder turn when my cousin introduced to me what would become my favorite fighting franchise of all time, Tekken. Back in the early 90s, wild video arcades roamed the land for as far as the eye could see. These arcades were extremely popular, due in large part to the burgeoning fight game genre that exploded onto the scene with the massively successful title, Street Fighter II. Street Fighter II was so lucrative that it inspired tons of copycat games, such as Fatal Fury, Killer Instinct, and Mortal Kombat. But by the mid-90s, video games were beginning to find their footing in the third dimension, with titles like Sega's Virtua Fighter as one of the earliest pioneers of polygonal pugilism. The doors of the 3D fighting world were officially kicked wide open. When Namco hired a few former Sega employees who just so happened to have previously worked on Virtua Fighter, Namco thought it would be a good idea to convert the 3D animation tests that they've been fiddling with recently into a full-fledged 3D fighting game. There's a lot of Japanese names in here, so bear with me guys. With former Virtua Fighter designer Seiichi Ishii as its director, the game known as Tekken hit Japanese arcades in late 1994. A bona fide hit in the arcades, porting Tekken to the Sony PlayStation was a no-brainer. The PSX version would go on to make Tekken a household name amongst the fighting game enthusiasts, and launch one of the most popular fighting game franchises of all time. Honestly, any game that has robots and ninjas beating up grizzly bears and luchadors is bound to be a hit. With the series having recently released its 7th mainline entry, it's a good time to re-examine exactly what made Tekken so great in the first place. Well, you know, besides the obvious, robots and ninjas and stuff.
You win.
Tekken is the story of a former CIA operative who is to hunt down and rescue his teenage daughter, who's been kidnapped by...
Taken.
What was that?
That's Taken.
I know, Tekken. We're talking about Tekken this week.
No, not Tekken. Taken. The movie Taken with Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson's in Tekken? Sorry, Tekken is the story of Kazuya Mishima, a man who had a not-so-pleasant childhood. See, Kazuya's father, Hachi, is the owner of the Mishima Zaibatsu, a huge multinational conglomerate. In case you were wondering, Hachi's also a total In order to determine whether or not his 5-year-old son was worthy to inherit the fortune, Hachi throws young Kazuya off the side of a cliff like a misshapen Spartan child. If Kazuya survived the fall and managed to climb his way back to the top, he'd have proven himself a worthy man. Due to the mysterious devil gene within him, Kazuya miraculously survives the fall, albeit with some pretty severe physical and emotional scarring. Fueled by hatred for his dear old dad, Kazuya swears to one day get his revengeance. Fast forward 21 years later, and Heihachi is ready to once again test his son. But instead of tossing him off of something high this time, Heihachi organizes the King of the Iron Fist tournament. Not that Iron Fist. Fighters from all over the world are gathered to compete for the $1 billion grand prize, each with their own reason for entering the tournament. And it's down to the final 8. There's Nina Williams, an Irish assassin sent to eliminate Heihachi, King, a Catholic priest/luchador who hopes to one day win the prize money for the orphans under his care, Martial Law, a Chinese-American cook who dreams of opening up his own martial arts dojo, Paul Phoenix, an American judo practitioner who aims to prove that he's the best fighter in the universe, Michelle Chang, a woman of Chinese and Native American descent who seeks revenge on Heihachi for murdering her father, Jack, a battle android programmed to terminate Kazuya, Yoshimitsu, the enigmatic leader of the Manji clan of ninjas who's aiming to steal the cash prize, and of course, Kazuya, who's finally ready to get some payback on his pops. But not only do these fighters have to worry about one another, they also have to face Hachi himself in the grand finals before they can claim their billion-dollar prize for themselves. Now, because this is an older fighting game, there's no story mode to speak of. The only sources of a narrative are the characters' individual arcade mode endings, and the information provided outside the game, like wikis, instruction manuals, comics, and such. With Tekken, the focus is clearly more on gameplay than it's on story, and that's perfectly fine. It's a tournament. There's a lot of dudes fighting each other. We get it. Now, Tekken certainly shows its age, but it also possesses a charm that you can only find in games from the mid-90s era. The first thing one might notice when they sit down to play Tekken are the extremely blocky character models. There weren't that many polygons to go around in 1995, so we all made do with what we got. What's more important is that these character models still managed to convey the most important aspects of these characters at a glance. It's important to remember that fighting games like Tekken were initially arcade games, and your average arcade player didn't exactly have the time or even the access to the deeper information about the game that they were playing. Fighting game characters had to convey the critical information about themselves on the versus screen or during actual fights. You may not know much about King just by looking at him, but you can probably ascertain that he's mysterious since he wears a mask, and that he's got some unique grabs since he looks like a buff boy luchador. Relying on archetypes like this was the most efficient way to let your player base know who did what in your fighting game, and Tekken does just that. All of the characters definitely look unique and lively, especially when in motion. Tekken features 11 different stages, with each one representing a real-life location, such as Athens, Greece, and Kyoto, Japan. Now, these stages may be a bit primitive looking since they're just static images in the background, but they do their job in providing a lot of visual variety, as well as establishing a strong and memorable sense of place while you're beating the hell out of your friends. Speaking of memorable, Tekken also displays the name of your location in the bottom right-hand screen while you play. Thank you, Liam Neeson.
I've contracted AIDS.
Now, if you grew up in the 90s, then Tekken Soundtrack will hit you in a place you probably forgot you had. It's dripping with that certain type of funk that was prevalent in fighting games of that era, and it works perfectly. The music is appropriately eclectic, since it has to represent a lot of locations around the world. There's upbeat tracks as well as ones that sound ominous and dire, but each track does its job of making you want to keep fighting while you hear it. I can definitely see my younger self popping this PlayStation disc into a CD player and jamming out. While Tekken's voiceover direction isn't the greatest, its sound effects still sound pretty devastating till this day. Without a doubt, Tekken is a bit rough around the edges when it comes to its presentation. Some of its cutscenes look downright disturbing. But when we consider that this game is 20 years old and that it was one of the very first entries into the 3D fighting game genre, it's easy to see as to why it was so impressive at the time. Even today, it's clear that Tekken's visuals and audio do an excellent job of facilitating what's more important: the fighting. Tekken's gameplay is what any good fighting game's gameplay should be. Simple yet deep. Anyone can pick up the controller and have a good time with Tekken, but mastering it will take a hell of a lot of time. Each character comes equipped with an extensive move pool that includes basic attacks, combo strings, and even special moves that require more complex joystick motions. Tekken also allows you to attack in different states of movement, such as while running or while getting up off the floor. You can even attack an opponent who's lying prone on the ground. Attacks can hit high, mid, low, and there are even powerful blows that can't be blocked at all. And just like many other successful fighting games, Tekken employs, for the most part, a rock-paper-scissors relationship between attacking, blocking, and throwing. One of the Tekken's franchise's most unique features is the button system. Whereas most other fighting games have its button correspond to strength or direction of the attacks, Tekken's 4 buttons each represent a different limb of the body. There's left punch, left kick, and right kick, and every attack in the game is performed with these combinations of these 4 buttons. This system makes Tekken feel a bit more intuitive than many other fighters out there, and honestly, it's kind of cool to be able to watch a character and to be able to understand, on a basic level, how a particular move or combo string is performed based on which of the character's limbs were used. Even though it only has 8 playable characters, Tekken's roster offers a variety of fighting styles for the player to choose from. Every character has their own set of strengths and weaknesses, so there's bound to be at least one character that clicks with you. Nina fills the role of the quick character who demands precise execution. King is the game's go-to grappler who gets big damage from his throws. Law applies pressure with his high and low mix-ups and flashy acrobatics. Paul prefers to rush the opponent down with strikes capable of blowing through their defense. Michelle excels at controlling the space between herself and the opponent. Jack boasts high damage, reach, and health at the expense of slow movement speed. Yoshimitsu possesses an entire arsenal of tricky, high-risk attacks to confuse his foes. And Kazuya rewards players for being patient and counterattacking with single, heavy strikes. It may not seem so due to its smaller cast size, but Tekken's roster is meticulously crafted to provide a rich and varied experience. Tekken's arcade mode is just what you'd expect. It simulates the arcade experience by having your selected character go up against 9 opponents in a row. Your first 7 fights are against random members of the cast, but the 8th fight is against an unselectable sub-boss. The final fight is against Hachi himself, and if you manage to beat him, you're treated to a short cutscene that details what your character is up to at the end of the tournament. And yes, Tekken does include a versus mode, so you can sit on a couch with a friend and prove which of you is truly better at life. Versus mode even comes equipped with a salt meter, a handicap meter, just in case you want to tip the odds in one player's favor. This mode is where the real replayability and depth of Tekken lies. There's certainly a good amount of challenge to be found in playing against the CPU in arcade mode, but nothing compares to the sensation of battling against someone who's sitting right next to you. It's that very same sensation that probably made fighting games popular in the first place, and Tekken is no exception. It may not be the freshest fighting game on the block, but it's certainly possible for you and a buddy to lose hours while playing Tekken against each other. Tekken is deceptively simple looking, but if you peek under the hood, there's a lot going on. The game gives the players a lot of options in battle, and every one of these options has both a purpose and a counter. This deep gameplay foundation made Tekken a hit back in the day, and it's the reason why the Tekken franchise still thrives today.
You win.
Making it all the way past your 7 randomly selected arcade mode opponents and your character's unique sub-boss opponent will pit you against the man himself, Hachi. Fighting game final bosses are notorious for being tough bastards, and Hachi definitely fits that bill. He fights with a variation of the karate style that Kazuya uses. But whereas his son has to worry about picking his moments to attack carefully, Hachi doesn't really give a damn. He's got all that power that's synonymous with the fighting style, along with the speed, impressive range, and virtually no recovery on a lot of his moves. Many of his techniques are extremely hard to counter, even if you attempt to block and punish. This guy's got it all except for a decent haircut. But if you study his patterns and you possess a healthy knowledge of your own character's capabilities, you'll definitely bring him down. Each character has an ending cutscene that's unlocked once you beat arcade mode with them. These little cinematics have no voice acting, and they range in tone from silly to unintentionally silly. Ready for the breakdown? Here we go. Nina's sister Anne accuses Nina of stealing one of her stilettos, which earns her an open-handed slap in the mouth. Surprise! Nina had the shoe all along. What a bitch. King returns victoriously to his orphanage, where obviously Japanese full-motion video children rush out to greet him, worship him for the jaguar godman that he is. Law opens his own dojo, where he spends his days watching his students struggle at things that come easily to him. Paul breaks a bunch of glass before punching through a brick wall that has Kazuya's picture taped to it, a la Sylvester Stallone in Rocky IV. Michelle returns to the farm from Courage the Cowardly Dog and happily runs towards her mom, who's chilling on the porch. Jack's programming is uploaded to a newly activated mass-produced army of Jacks. Yoshimitsu and his clan ride through a poverty-stricken village where Law and his family happen to live. Yoshimitsu busts a Robin Hood by letting all of his stolen cash rain down on the poor folk. This also happens to blow martial law's mind. And finally, having defeated his own father, Kazuya picks up Hachi's broken body and tosses it off the same cliff from 21 years ago. Then Kazuya hits us with that satisfying smile. That's some good patricide.
Mentos, the fresh maker.
Now, according to later games in the series, some of these endings are actually canon, while others are more what-if scenarios. What is for sure is that all these endings seem to be depictions of each of these characters' dreams coming true. Sounds kind of nice. Another game completed. Did we get it? Ah, crap! I have to... during the completion thing... The first unlockable that you'll probably get in Tekken is Hachi, who's unlocked by simply beating arcade mode without using a continue. But Tekken also features so many unlockable characters that it actually doubles the roster size. These extra characters are actually the 8 sub-bosses that can be fought in arcade mode, and they're unlocked by beating the game with their respective default characters. Completing arcade mode with Nina unlocks Anna, her sister. King unlocks his similarly masked rival, Armor King. Beating the game with Law gets you Wang, a close friend of Kazuya's grandfather, Jinpachi Mishima, while Paul gets you Kuma, Heihachi's bear bodyguard. Michelle will unlock Kunamitsu, an exiled member of Yoshimitsu's clan. Jack gets you Prototype Jack, which happens to be an older model of the Jack series androids. Yoshimitsu will unlock Genryu, a world-famous sumo wrestler. And finally, Kazuya will unlock Lee, Heihachi's adopted son, and in this case, Kazuya's stepbrother. Or adopted brother? That's like the same thing, right? I'm pretty sure adoption and never mind. Now, it should be noted that all of these bonus characters are effectively clones of the characters in the default cast, albeit with slightly altered movesets and properties. It's somewhat like the relationship between Dr. Mario and Mario with Smash Bros., but that doesn't necessarily mean that every single character sub-boss is a clone of themselves. They might be clones of other people in the cast. However, Heihachi and the sub-bosses cannot be used in arcade mode, unfortunately, but they can be used to your heart's content in versus mode. Now, this last thing is my favorite completion bonus out there in a fighting game. Tekken also includes a full-fledged version of Namco's arcade classic, Galaga. No, really, you can play a fully functional version of Galaga while waiting for Tekken to boot up. It's awesome. This is really a nice homage to Namco's roots, and it seriously hammers home how far video games have come when you go straight from shooting pixelated ships to seeing Tekken's open cinematic. But here's what makes it so cool. If you manage to flawlessly beat this Galaga game, you will unlock an extra palette swap for Kazuya that depicts what he looks like when he was consumed by his devil gene. Awesome! Depending on how much experience you have with fighting games, Tekken may be a bit of a challenge for you. Simply mashing the buttons will only get you so far when you're matched up against a CPU opponent on the higher difficulties. You're really going to have to learn the ins and outs of your particular character's movesets if you expect to dominate in this game. And honestly, that can seem a bit daunting when you consider just how many moves each character has in Tekken. But ultimately, it's fun and incredibly rewarding to practice your character and witness your skills with them improving over time. Exercising a little bit of patience while playing Tekken will yield plenty of fun and memorable moments. Once you learn to actually defend yourself and counterattack, you'll be having a blast. Between the unlockable characters in arcade mode and the infinite potential of versus mode, Tekken has a ton of replayability. The things that make the Tekken franchise so great are present and accounted for in its first entry. Tekken is, without a doubt, a dated game, but it still shines in the areas that matters. It's easy to pick up and play, while remaining incredibly deep and challenging. The visuals and audio may leave a lot to be desired here, but the core gameplay still plays great. If you've got a friend around, you can always pop in Tekken and have a guaranteed good time. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finish it.
Finish it!
Hey, ho, what you gonna do? Hey, ho, you should subscribe. If you like today's episode, give us a like, comment, all that great stuff. And while you're at it, watch some more Completionist. There's so many videos. If you're new, you have so much to watch. You should watch it. Click on the boxes in the corner. They'll show you our videos. They are great. You are great. I love all of you. That's all the time we've got for today, guys. So please, as always, let us know what you thought about today's episode somewhere on the internet. You got your Reddits and your Facebook and your Twitter and your Instagram and your Tumblr and your Vines and your Periscopes, and there's just so much social networking stuff. Guys, all of you are awesome. Thank you for being here watching this episode and supporting us. Now, if you excuse me, let's just watch King's ending in all of its great awkwardness. Uncut, just for you guys. Spoiler, though. Spoiler because you're watching the ending right now. Spoiler. Although you had like 20 years to watch it, so